Folks, Jon Ossoff could very, very easily be crushed in the 2026 Senate race in Georgia. Jon Ossoff is running for re-election, is considered the most vulnerable Democrat up for re-election in 2026. And to make matters worse for Democrats, this is also a state that was won by President Trump in 2024. So stick around to the end of this video if you want to know who I believe is going to be the best Republican to beat Jon Ossoff. But before we get into it, drop down below, hit that subscribe button, make sure you never miss another video from our channel in the future. So we have to give a little context to the political atmosphere in Georgia right now. So Georgia is a swing state federally. 2024, it voted for President Trump by about 2.5 points, voted for Biden by about 11,000 votes in 2020, and then it voted for Trump in 2016. In 2020, they elected 2 Democrat senators, the first time they had elected Democrat senators in 18 years. It wasn't since 2002, since there was the Republicans have held these seats since 2002. And to make things even more complicated, Brian Kemp, the very, very popular governor of Georgia, won re-election in Georgia by, I believe it was about 8 points. He won re-election by. So obviously very, very a purple state federally. It leans right in the statewide races when there's a popular candidate, someone like Brian Kemp. And right now, Georgia currently has 2 Democrat senators that are representing them in D.C., Raphael Warnock and Jon Ossoff. They were both initially elected in the 2020 election. They both went to runoffs and both beat their Republican opponents. Raphael Warnock ran for re-election in 22, and this is kind of where we're going to kind of get into that. But back to the 26 race, the primaries are going to be held in the summer of 2026, and I expect some pretty big names to jump in this race. And this is a must-win state for the Republicans. Georgia is seen as a must-win. It has the highest chance of flipping to the Republican Party, and it is the most vulnerable seat for the Democrats. In 2022, Senator Raphael Warnock was running for re-election to serve a full 6-year term. Trump decided to back Herschel Walker instead of David Perdue, who was much, much more likely to win that election, he was liked a lot more on the state level than Herschel Walker was. And due to poor candidate quality, Raphael Warnock won re-election. Wasn't by a ton, but he still won re-election at the same time that Brian Kemp won re-election to be the governor by 8 points. There was almost 9 points that separated the results for the Senate race and the governor's race. And the governor's race was 9 points to the right. And flipping the other Senate seat is a top priority for Senate Republicans, and it should be a top priority for Republicans in general in 2026, as Ossoff is seen as the most vulnerable Democrat in 2026. Now, we know Ossoff is just the right candidate to pick off. There's a good mix of things here. He sided with Democrats. Basically, he sided with Democrats like 95% of the time. He even recently voted against legislation that would keep men out of women's sports. Even though 80% of the country opposes transgenders in female sports, he and every Democrat voted against it. But somehow, Democrats, like I said, unanimously voted against it. But he's also voting against a bill that would avoid a government shutdown that's coming up here, which is going to be a big thing. The Democrats are trying to make a big deal out of it. Look, here's the thing. They're trying to pass a continuing resolution. It's going to fund the government till September 30th. The Democrats are going to say, well, the Republicans hold the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. Well, you're right. It passed the House of Representatives, but in order to invoke cloture on this bill, you need to have 60 senators vote in favor of it. The Democrats don't have to filibuster. Nobody's forcing the Democrats to filibuster this continuing resolution, because the Democrats just want a 30-day continuing resolution so we can go through this whole fight again in a month from now. When Republicans want to fund the government for the next 6 months, which then is going to allow DOJ to go in and make some serious cuts inside of the federal government. And then when we pass an appropriations bill, then we can really take action on this and turn these recommendations from DOJ into realities. But the thing is there are big social media influencers that are publicly going on a mission to make sure he does not win re-election in 2026. DC Drano clearly saying right here, defeating Jon Ossoff in Georgia will be my one of my core missions in 2026. Same thing with Riley Gaines. She has said the same exact thing that she's going to do after he voted to allow transgender mentally ill men in women's sports. She's going to go after Ossoff and make sure he loses re-election, which that could be tough. That could be a tough mix to deal with right there. But then to move on to the next big one, which is Brian Kemp. Because it's very, very fair to say that if Brian Kemp is in this race, he will most likely beat Ossoff. The combination of the political baggage that he's carrying, plus a strong candidate in Brian Kemp in this race, could be the right mixture that we need to knock off Jon Ossoff in this race. And Kemp is a big part of this equation, from my opinion. Kemp is well known. He's liked. He has an insane approval rating in Georgia. 2022 was a tough year for for Republicans. The red wave was pretty much isolated to Georgia and Florida. So you have a Republican who clearly can win. Even in a state that it's purpley, he can win by 8 points. There's no reason to not move forward with that, especially considering the other candidates that are potentially in this race here. When you're looking at people like Brad Raffensperger, I think John King would be okay, and I think Mike Collins might be okay too, but Marjorie Taylor Greene, but also they may be good, but they're not going to have the political, the fundraising capabilities that Brian Kemp will, and they do not have the statewide popularity or even name recognition that Brian Kemp will. Because Brian Kemp can win state elections. And just look at his approval rating. Recent approval rating that was taken about a month ago showed that he's up 33 points. 64% approval rating to 31% disapproval. That is insane. You can't get half the country to agree. You can't get most of the country to agree on 2% of issues. But somehow, a 2/3 majority approve of Brian Kemp in Georgia. You've got the wind at your back. Go with it. And Brian Kemp has made some. He had made a post a couple of days ago on Twitter, or on X, I should say, that really makes me think that he may be trying to jump in this race here. But here's the thing. Candidate quality matters. Brian Kemp is one of the most conservative Republicans on this planet. No doubt about it. There's zero doubt about it. Yes, did he have a little spat with Trump about the 2020 election in 2020? Yes. Do I think Brian Kemp did the right thing? Yes. Absolutely. Brian Kemp made this. Men should not play in women's sports. The people of Georgia know that, and our senators should too. Maybe we're looking for a different senator that would actually support something like this. Maybe hinting at a possible run. Because he's also a toyer. There's also been rumors that he's looking at running in 2028. But I think the best thing for him, I don't think he's going to win I don't think he could win the nomination in 28. Is it possible? Of course. I don't see him as a front runner right now for the nomination for president in 2028. Focus on the 2026 midterm election. Focus on the Senate race. This is where the bread and butter is at right now. Put your focus in here. You're going to gain a lot of trust with the GOP if you can win this race here. And then maybe you'll look at 32 or 36 he looks at running for president, and maybe the country's ready for him at that point. But I just don't think 28 is it would be a great plan. But this race, candidate quality matters. Do not let 2022 happen again. This is a very winnable seat, just like it was in 22. And national Republicans are going to spend a lot of money in the state to make sure that they win it. Let's just ask the Republicans in Georgia to do the right thing. Nominate Brian Kemp to be the next senator from Georgia. An early polling already is showing that Brian Kemp is leading by 6-ish points over Jon Ossoff in a head-to-head matchup when no other Republican really even came close. And then when they did a generic Republican, Ossoff was still leading by a point or two against a generic Republican. But against Kemp leads him by about 6 points. But another thing that, what was the most, how would you say this, effective advertising campaign in the 2024 election? It was the President Donald Trump's they-them campaign. It was the most effective campaign that we saw. The most effective political campaign in the 2024 race, the they-them. And why I bring that up is because in this same poll that found that Ossoff would lead a generic Republican by about a point or two, it also found that once the people who were polled found out how Ossoff voted against a bill to keep women out of men's sports, Brian Kemp's lead in that race, in that poll, jumped to double digits. Double digits. So maybe that's a sign for Republicans in Georgia. You know, economy, taxes, immigration, yes, but obviously this transgender thing is still going to be a big issue. But we're 20 months out from this race, and I will be here to keep you updated along the way. Anything that comes up in this race, we will be here to bring you the news. And don't forget to drop down below, smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future. And until next time.